Synergia Cooperative Institute. And Synergia Cooperative Institute is one of the three sponsoring organizations for this series of 10 lectures entitled Rojava, Resistance, Resilience, and Renewal, Democratic Confederalism, and the Changing Face of Revolution. This is lecture number 10, the last in the series. The title of this lecture today is Comparing the Rojava Experience with Other Civil Movements for Regime Change, Rojava's Lessons for Global Progressive Movements. And we have today our key presenter, Sinan Joudi. He was a journalist and a consultant for civil society institutions in Northeast Syria, and particularly in reference to the fields of law and education. And our respondent today is John Holloway, who is a sociologist and philosopher whose work is closely associated with the Zapatista movement in Mexico. The other two sponsoring groups for the lecture series are the Global University for Sustainability and the Center for Civil Diplomacy in Northeast Syria. We will begin with the presentation by Sinan. Sinan, you will speak for about an hour, and I will join in and give you a warning at the 50-minute mark to let you know that you have 10 minutes left in your time for your presentation. After which, John, of course, you will be welcome to share your own reflections for up to 20 minutes as you like. And then we will take questions and comments from other participants for the remainder of the time. I will moderate that section. And the entire production, so to speak, will be about 2 hours in length. So without further delay, I am very happy again to be moderating this presentation on the unique experience of the movement in Rojava and in Northeast Syria. And I want to thank our interpreter, Jalil, who's been doing wonderful work for almost all of our lectures. So thank you again, Jalil, for helping in the interpretation from Kurdish into English. And a final comment for those of you who are with us today. If you look at the bottom of your screen, you will see a symbol, a globe symbol. Press on that and select the language in which you would like to listen to the presentation. So thank you everyone for attending. And Sinan, please, when you are ready, you may begin your presentation.
Baskın.
Thank you very much. Yesterday in Kamishlo, we buried two very famous revolutionaries who have fallen, and we had the cemetery, we have the funeral ceremony for them. And these two revolutionaries, they have been involved in this movement for a long time, and they had great experience. And in their personality, I would like to commemorate all the martyrs that have fallen in this struggle. Why am I talking about them? Because the revolutionaries, they sacrificed their entire life for the sake of this revolution. There are thousands of other revolutionaries. They are all the people, even some of them are nameless. They are ready to sacrifice their life for a better life. So in that sense, we would like to it's important to remember all those revolutionaries And also, I would like to thank you, the organizers, Synergia Co-Institute, CDC, as well as University of Global University of Sustainability.
شورش روجاوا از بارم يعني اب نزگنه سمینر دیتر گلک
Uh,
نرفاندم سر چیه بو
I'm sure this is the
گلک
10th
سمینر
seminar, and then in previous ones you have handled different parts, different aspects of the revolution. And today I would like to talk about some theoretical foundation of the revolution and what are the main critiques and what are the alternatives that have been proposed and how successful they were, and if they have failed, what are the reasons for the failure. I will focus on these points in my speech. Also, and I am sure with this seminar we will complete all the aspects of revolution. This project is based on Mr. Abdullah Öcalan's ideas and the revolution that he led. In this ideology, in his thought, revolution in Rojava is a kind of synthesis of all the revolutions happened all over the world and maybe going a step further. It's the combination of a struggle, universal struggle for freedom. And all the revolutions in the history until today, as Öcalan defines, it is focuses on a ethical community and develops its ideas and thoughts accordingly to practice it and also have a political society. For the we can have some titles for the revolution. We can also talk about the historical perspective. History, it's not repeating itself, but it is not it's a line that go improving. No, history is not about something happened, but it is something that develops with all the heritage and all the experience coming from the history. And all those struggles against capitalist modernity, against capitalism, their experiences and their heritage, we studied them very deeply and also developed our critiques and also adopt their experience into our own religion. All the activities, all the words called for the freedom, it's been thousands of years that people are fighting, struggling for freedom, but yet why we cannot reach the freedom that we are dreaming of? Why we don't get better results? Of course, and when we have our critique, we have an ideological foundation and also revolutionary thoughts, and our critique also is based on these foundation. And we not only criticize, but we also develop our alternatives, both political and practical alternatives. So at the beginning, we should determine that revolution in Rojava is for a success, but which is not an absolute success, but it brings all the experiences of the different different people and their struggle and their combination, a synthesis. And I would like to share my notes. Now the biggest problem is the lack of solution. There are problems on daily basis, like it be ethnic or ecological or social or whatever. And when we go to the source of these problems at the first level, what are the first of all, we determine the source of these problems, and then second and the third level, we try to understand and try to find a solution. So our all the terms and terminology or the scientific theories that I have been talking about, how they can serve to our goal objectives. But in our scientific structures, we are weak. That's And we see that the Global University of Sustainability, they also had a similar critique about these theoretical foundation, not only to our movement, but most of the movements in the world. So, as the Rojava Revolution, this system of knowledge, and we criticize this knowledge structure, and also we focus on the term and terminology that we use every day. What is a revolution? What is evolution or revolution? What are the problematics? And when a problem becomes a social problem, or when it become a different problem, these are all the topics that we focus on. And it is also different if you work in a scientific field and at university or at school, you learn this term and terminology, you talk about some problems. These might be different, and also we have to find these terms in our everyday life in order to find feasible solutions. So it's not only about being in the academia and looking at the system or the structures or having critiques, but also trying to create alternatives. Therefore, we need to question our knowledge structures. So, is it enough? Is it sufficient enough or not? So we see it is very weak, so we have to develop it, but this shortcoming comes from actually that we don't find it in this society. But it is also important to have your own right terminology and the meaning of those terms that we use and what we mean with them. And also law is also a very important field in this part. There should be a balance between our terms and the law, or same as the ecologist movements or ecology. But we see there is a difference between our approach to ecology and also other so-called ecology movements, how they approach the question. Here, in terms of law, there are some terms that determined within the international law. For example, some legal terms can be also very narrow in terms of interpretation. In the international law, right to self-determination is only connected to having a nation state. But we understand this right to self-determination in a different way, not necessarily a nation state. Or the values. We also have to understand the values. For example, values the values determined by the real socialism, or in the writings of Marx, Engels, and also the values that we also have on the ground. So value theory, or theory of values, is very important for the change of the system and also offering some alternatives. It is one of the fundamental issues. And then let's focus on the theory that we are working on now. Division of science is like human sciences and also natural sciences. We don't want to accept the division, because the natural sciences and the human sciences, they should be social sciences together. We don't disattach them from each other, because the knowledge as a whole can help us to improve. There are some evaluation units in science, so we have to talk about these units. And when we see the improvement or development of society is connected to having a state, they see state as the engine, and they try to fit the society within the state by sometimes denying the reality of the society. And this is the worst sociological approach to the matter. Maybe in Marxism, classes and an economy are the main units that they have approached to society. This is important, but also not insufficient to understand the society. So they deduct everything to the class system, or deduct everything to economy, but there are some other aspects of the society are always being ignored. So in order to understand the life and society as a whole, there might be economy, there might be maybe class system, but it's not only that, it's beyond them. When we look at the Chinese Revolution, it's very obvious that they also used classes and economy as their main unit of the revolution. But of course, they eventually became capitalist, like the ones that they were opposing and trying to have a revolution against. So and power relationships are also very important. When we talk about the power, it doesn't mean that the entire society is in charge. It also division between the power and also the society is another problematic area.
virci yani em bejin tene minakin bu şekilde dınırkinin.
There are some approaches which they are very they are like classifications. They classify, and with these theories and with these images, they get lost when they talk about the question. There are also universal approaches, and then to understand the entire universe, that's the thing that you have to understand history in order to understand your society. This is also one of the that's the suggestion in every system, even the communists, they talk about this historical heritage and historical experience, and they all claim that they get the good parts of this experience and leave the bad ones outside. But we have to understand what are the good ones, what are the bad ones, and according to whom. In alternative movements, it is important to understand, and I think we at the Rojava revolution, I think we reached a certain level. Okay.
Yani geçti hem bu hodit sistem hem kesen yani tevgeren diş sisteme de legerina vahaye hem karbejin kuperskirik yeme esası dınav
So our main quest
bizda vaki perçeki deslatlar hey o xlaskını den perskirik jiyan.
in our quest, it's always important to liberate us from existing power relationships in order to understand the question, in order to understand the society, in order to understand the reality. History, analysis, and models, alternatives, or in all these topics, there is a circle, because this story repeats and renews itself as a circle. We what is this? We always want to criticize system with the tools and opportunities that the system provides us, and then expect a different outcome, different than the system. No, if you use these terms and the tools of the system, your outcome will not be different than the current system. And we see that's the part with the socialist approach, that they couldn't come up with with an alternative that they really hoped for. So, and everything should be also depending on the local conditions. When we look at the revolutions in the US, they focused on their own more pressing issues, the local circumstances.
Komünalite çerçevesi ve bir çerçeve komünalitede çareseriye yarandın. Ama mesela ev tecrübe komüne Paris'i demek
Or when we look at the French Revolution and the Paris Commune, they focus on the communes because after the French Revolution, they were looking for something else, and the commune was an alternative, seen as an alternative, but it failed, and then it went in another direction. So we just need to have this balance between the state or the power relationships and the development of society. We have to see it as as in a balance, not that a state will uh, lead the development of the society as an engine. So we have to understand this relationship between them. Furthermore, we we are using a sociological method as a term. Maybe it's not a very accurate. It's a term that's set by Öcalan. It's called the democratic civilization. Shall we find it? There were some discussions about finding a better name or more suitable name, but what he means with democratic civilization, we don't see it as a utopia. It has different aspects for regarding the past, today, and future. And in order to understand the development of history and the society to see in a more concrete way, we need this method. For example, when we talk about democratic civilization, we see as a sociological alternative. It's a different alternative. It is a different perspective. It is based on the natural society, how the society was at the beginning, based on the founds in the archaeological sites and the historical, and also how the agriculture started, how the husbandry started, how they started founding the villages, how were the relationships within the society. So we understand that the most primitive structure of the society from the beginning, and it helps us to find out how the society changed. So we go back to the beginning of the time that people used to live without a state. Of course, it is also based on the uh, scientific proofs. Archaeology that therefore plays a very important role. And we use these kind of information, these kind of sources to understand the 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 society. Why do we start about democracy with for example from city states in antique Greece? Why do we start with the history with the Sumerians or history of the religion with Sumerians? These are the written ones, that's true, but there might be a beginning beyond beyond that. There might be a civilization before the establishment or the emerge of the state. That will give us better data about the structure of the social structures back then. And considering them all into taking them all into consideration will allow us to understand these roots of the society and the roots of these institutions within the societies and power relations, and therefore this democratic civilization is our main method. Although there was these very strong imposure on the society, the states, and there were some wars, and there was literally a war against the society, but the society kept some of its feature. And today we can find these features within the societies. So
Yani, pivanın xod est nişan dike, Çaba
we,
dike, persivi, şkodike, ulugori, her
we
roje
are
dıhını
talking about a society
Jibovi çıkar lazım ben.
that
Plan
it
sağlam
determines its own principles and they act according to their needs and they discuss and they show their will, they express their will, and then they they plan for the realization of their purpose. This is our essence. The society is capable of organizing itself, not that a state has to organize the society. So
sisteme devlet u deslatariye derketiye. Yani
lots of things that we have been taught that they were natural, but these are the things that were taught by us by the state and the power relationships. And today we see positivism, we see religionism, we see postmodern approaches, and these are all the domains under the control of the state. So, and we don't see any hope in a short future that these parts will liberate themselves from the control or the influence of the state. There are some socialists, there are some clergics, and they have a very rigid approach. And there are some of them who are criticizing the current system, but then they fail to bring an alternative. They want to create an alternative within the borders that's determined by the state. They cannot, therefore, bring a real change. So they are in a circle, and the circle was drawn by the state, and these critiques and these dissidents or the ones who are criticizing the system, they are just turning around in the same circle. They cannot break the circle. The point is that our quest is breaking this circle. And this platform that today, I'm sure this will be an occasion for breaking the circle. And this is and it is not easy. The level or the awareness that today we have is thanks to the sacrifices done by so many people and for the resistance of the people. And all the discussions going on within the society about the system, we consider them as a part of the ongoing revolution because that is giving the power to the society, and the society will decide and also lead this revolution. Why we are insisting on this? Because we don't think we are powerful enough. For example, it can be very influential. It can be this approach can influence our relations with the politics, with the others, and with this organizing the society or developing our personalities. It might give it can be very influential. So we can see that the history of human beings, it was like more than 98% was without state. Only like 3-4% is with the state. So we have to go back and find the pre-state societies, how they organize themselves, and it can enlighten us. So now today in Rojava, within the scope of the revolution, we are trying to have this social structure and an incredible solidarity among the society. We are not trying to be very pragmatist and try to use the existing structures. No, we are trying to organize the society in a different way. And as Sinan Joudi, as a part of Rojava revolution, as long as I work, as long as I serve the revolution, then I am a part of the revolution. But tomorrow, if I say I am no more revolutionary, I am no longer a socialist, I want to have a liberal life and I want to have a capitalist life, then I cannot be a part of this revolution. Other movements that we are in contact with, this is the point actually. We differ from the other movements. I think there's in socialism, in Marxism, in ecologist, or even the anarchist and also feminist, they have some common politics, but there are also points that they differ from the others. For example, if we didn't if we didn't have as a holistic approach and considering this a universal struggle, we wouldn't be able to reach out other movements in the world. If we just uh, limited it to the Kurdish people, then we wouldn't be able to develop a structure with the Arabs or with the Assyrians, or the Christians living in the region. And if it was only a national movement, then we wouldn't be able to get in touch with the others on the basis of anti-patriarchy, for example. So this is all interrelated. So we are also not using the capitalist terms and terminology in to substantiate our discussions. So when you get in relationship with other movements, when you cooperate with the others, then with whom you can cooperate? What are your red lines? So don't misunderstand me. It's not that I'm not talking about this liberal approach. Of course, we will have our red lines. And for example, ethical and political society is a red line for us. We cannot cross that line. So if anyone who wants to or willing to support this goal, then we can cooperate with them. But it is not about you cannot say we cannot cooperate with them because they belong to another ethnic group, or they belong to another ethnic or religion group, or this is not our criteria. Our criteria is that anyone who can promote this revolution can be a part of the revolution. There are ecological movements in North Kurdistan, in Turkey. They wanted to cooperate with Greenpeace, which is allegedly an ecological movement. And the answer, the response from the Greenpeace was that they said we cannot get involved in politics, but the Kurdish, the forests in Kurdistan are being destroyed by the Turkish army. Aren't they the trees? Aren't they the forest that Greenpeace is actually standing for? So this, and with the climate change and everything, that we need to work all together, right, in the face of this climate change and its effects. But these liberal organizations they do not want to cooperate with us or with the Kurdish movements just because they are Kurds, and their excuse is that we don't want to get into politics. So, and the international legal system or legal rules that we have in the world, we suffered a lot, we understood them, we saw them, and now we also have our own red lines. So exclusion, stigma is a red line for us. We will never exclude anyone. Our We are 50, 60 million people, but there is not a legal basis which will legitimize our rights, and no, or international declaration of human rights. According to the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, you have to ask people what they want for their future. But no, 100 years ago, they sat down and they signed Lausanne Treaty, and nobody asked Kurds what they really wanted. But and this current legal system is actually itself the source of the many problems that we face. What we need to change, and also what should be the criteria for me to cooperate with the other movements. In that sense, I think we have enough experience, we have the expertise, and thanks to this expertise that we are moving further. And why is that? Because we know the current legal system, international law, therefore we don't actually pay much attention to the diplomacy on the state level. Our diplomacy is on the people's level. We have the popular diplomacy then instead of this formal state diplomacy. This diplomacy will also provide a more connection between different groups, and eventually will lead the democratic confederalism. In its basis, we have humanism, but there is a general principle. It says the societies everywhere. We talk about humanism and the individuals, but we also see it as a society. And we live in, for example, we live in a society in Rojava, and the social problems might occur, and these problems are not only related to Rojava. It might occur in a different part of the world, in a different society. So the problems that we have in our societies are not that different. But what we can do, we can bring people who are suffering from these very similar social problems and create solidarity and bring them together, and then we get unified and we can create an alternative model. In that sense, revolution in Rojava was a start. It's a very small start. It's been like 10 years that I have been involved very actively in this revolution, both in terms of practical and also theory. I was part of the trainings, education, or I work in the civil society organizations. So I can see in terms of theory, there is a significant development, improvement, but we can say maybe 60% we have been successful, but for the rest, it still needs some development. There is room for improvement. In terms of theory, I think we clarify it. It's very clear, but bringing it to the life, realizing this theory, it will take time. This It's been thousands of years. Our geography, our landscape has been the center of these politics of the hegemonical powers. So we So this is we have always been the center of the conflict of hegemonical powers. So when you talk about a socialist movement in Europe and a movement in Rojava, they cannot be very similar. Or look at the socialism in China or Vietnam or in Russia and socialism in or revolution in Rojava, they are not very similar. We have different circumstances. And then many people, they even don't recognize revolution in Rojava as a revolution because we don't actually fit within the classical definition of revolution. And one of the reason is that we don't seem as the legitimate interlocutors either. We are a nation or a people that divided between four countries. We have Turkish culture, Arab culture, and the Persian culture are being imposed on these people, or Islam, Christianity, Yazidis, or other different sects within different religion groups, even Judaism. You can see in this area because it's a huge area controlled by the four different countries, and then there is a diversity in terms of ethnicities and religion and language. In addition to that, we are being dominated by four different nation states which has their own systems. So it is not, it doesn't look very possible to have a revolution for the entire area for the time being. Therefore, we don't get recognized as revolution by many people. Because in that sense, they want us to be a revolution for Kurdish nation, but we are beyond that. We are, as I mentioned earlier, therefore we don't get the international recognition. So these are the circumstances. So these are all the important points that we have to take into consideration. Another, there are some different topics. Probably my colleagues have already talked about them in previous seminars, but I will shortly mention. As a approach as a nation. When we look at now, another approach is about, for example, religion. If there is a religion, it's deism, atheism, other things, there are discussions, but it's a phenomenon, it exists. And if the society accepted that religion as a culture, then they accepted it. But this faith, if it becomes or it is promoted by a nation state, then we can oppose it. With religionism, we see the most powerful of liberalism that's being used by against us. We say religion religion that should be considered as a cultural element, but not a political element. And nationalism, we we overcome we overcame the nationalism because we saw that international the great wars in the world, and nationalism played a significant role. And nationalism always brings this war and war politics. So we criticize that, and then we have beyond, we have a thing beyond this nationalism. We accept the existence of the nations, peoples, but we don't accept any politics against another ethnic group or another nation. Another one is positivism. Science is actually as a result of the human work and also society, but everything cannot be within the framework of this so-called positivism and scientific framework, that they are being divided from each other. And for every discipline, they have dozens of different sub-disciplines are being created, and then trying to define the truth. It's a wrong approach. In our at the university, at the academies, this is another topic that we criticize. Some of our friends probably we have professors, lecturers, or students or researchers, but how you can become a doctor, you go to study, you get a certificate and diploma. We also criticize this academic world. Like a diploma cannot be a criteria for science. I think it is also I think this is also something that maybe in entire world it is being recognized. It is the experience of life. And we also see this experience of life as a source for our science. University do not own all the science or the knowledge, or university is not a precondition for science. Life and there are things that 1,000 years ago, some people discovered some physics rules, and then it's been 1,000 years later, we study at university to prove that theory. But it shows us that those people who didn't have universities back then can also understand the universe. They can. But there is a social being, and the society has also knowledge and experience, and it cannot be ignored. The last point, and I'm sure it has always been discussed, it is the sexism or the liberation of women. In every language, in every religion, they have these starting words that you start with the name of the god, or the science starts with the meta, or the others, they are talking about the capabilities. But in Rojava revolution, liberation of women is our basmala in that sense. It is the foundation of revolution. And without the liberation of women, we will not be able to reach our goals, and this revolution will not be successful, because we are criticizing the society in terms of the approach to the women, and we are also criticizing many other feminist movements. They have a very liberal approach, and they are just moving within the scope of the liberal notion of freedom. So John appeared on
Sinan,
the screen.
you
I
have 10
think
minutes. 10 minutes.
Aha, tamam. Seri saat بتقول belki
as you said an hour, so I thought maybe okay. Okay, good.
Yani belki mesela ana her çar mezhebin yani beşin
So
şerhin bu iş liberalizm
for
tarih dikin çarşafın bir esası.
these are the four
Em
main
her
branches that we differ from the liberalist approach. Another thing,
Çıfar dıvır da heye yani beşin şoreş Rojava bu çiminak tarih bistine.
and the lessons that we can learn from Rojava revolution.
Yani
Now I would like to talk about something
sosyolojiye ki çava heylidir.
universal. When we look at the sociology here,
Digere. Cevherin livir henen pir kevnarin.
and the knowledge, the experience, the essence we have, they are very old ones. Of course, we might be seeing them from our own perspective, but the spirit here, it's a different structure. Many times, within us mm, within one personality, you can see also the contradictions. And on the other hand, when we talk about revolution, it's also a fight for survival, because we are always constantly under attack, and every day is a survival. And it's sometimes we actually say our life is here like on a bridge. One side is hell, the other side is heaven. So that's the balance. But this is not something new. This has been going on for thousands of years. And I'm sure many social movements, they have similar problems about understanding the truth within the society. We have conflicts, we are surrounded, we are under heavy embargo, and we are being, in terms of diplomacy, we have problems in international arena, international system, we are not recognized, and our existence is not accepted by the Kurdish, of the Kurdish people. Sometimes we are just being used as a matter of negotiations between big powers. Of course, these are all the negative things, but despite all these negative things, we are still resisting. But we can say, despite all these difficulties and challenges, we survived because we go back to history and knowledge of the society of thousand years. And that's why we are daring to say that we are creating a system for the entire universe, universal system. And this faith in ourselves is one of the points that makes it possible to survive despite all these challenges. And as I said, creating new societies is not something new, because the societies started here, civilizations started in this region. And when we see it, there are so many historical ruins around us. Khirbaresh is somewhere next, very close to us. That is one of the, that's the very first temple in the human history. It's in Urfa. It's like 6,000 years old. This is even beyond all the knowledge that people thought that the religion started after we settled down. No. And this region is very rich with all these ruins, and we can see the proofs and the traces of this. Why am I mentioning this? I want to show that we have a very old historical vein here. It's like a source that we can create societies, we can create civilizations, and we have the power. And we have the accumulation of thousands of years of history, experience. So we say if you want to have this alternative create, then if you want a true alternative, then we can go back to the historical roots, not an alternative according to the current system. Then it will not be a real change. So revolution means that's the power source of the revolutionaries in Rojava. And this is not a revolution that's ripping you off from your roots. In contrary, you are going back to your roots. And if you understand if the source of the problems, if you can develop some alternatives and you can realize those alternatives, then you can do everything. This is what we are doing in Rojava. And revolution in Rojava, that's how we can actually create freedom, equality, democracy for the, and I think, but I think this is something that we don't see among the other movements in the world. This is a shortcoming with them. Revolutionary is not something that you can actually evaluate the current events and find a solution or alternative. No, you should go beyond that. You find the source, and you need to have big dreams, and then you can be a real revolutionary. And thank you very much. Here I will finish my presentation, but I will be happy to answer any questions. And once again, thank you very much for the opportunity.
Thank you so much, Sinan. That was quite remarkable in a number of ways, and I'm sure we'll return to some of your themes shortly. But and I do have a couple of reflections I would like to share. But before that, let me please welcome our guest respondent, John Holloway. John, if you can turn on your video camera, if you're with us, and share your own reflections and comments at this time. You may start whenever you're ready.
A pleasure, of course, to be with you. And above all, an honor just to take part in this discussion, in this series of discussions on the movement in Rojava. I think one thing that Sinan said right at the beginning, and very effective, was paying tribute to the two comrades who were buried yesterday. And I think that comes across very powerfully. And in my case, it comes across powerfully, I think, in the sense of strengthening this sense of honor to be with you, but also strengthening a kind of feeling of inadequacy. No, I mean, here I am, a university professor sitting comfortably in the context of the institute that I work in Mexico. No, and kind of what right have I to speak or to comment on this process that is obviously so powerful and so painful that is taking place in Rojava? No, okay, so a sense of honor, a sense of inadequacy, and of course a sense of delight to have received the invitation. I think it's wonderful that the Global University of Sustainability is devoting these 10 sessions to a discussion of what is happening in Rojava, and that we should be finishing up with this session on the importance of Rojava for other revolutionary movements. Because, of course, it is an important, I mean, if we're doing that, it's because, I mean, if we are fascinated by what is taking place in Rojava, it is obviously not because we are Kurds or have Kurdish friends, but because we see it as being of enormous global significance. And Sinan said right at the end something about the feeling that they're on a bridge between heaven and hell. But I think we're all on that same bridge in a different way, of course. We're not perhaps under threat of military attack in the immediate future, some of us, no, but we are all on that bridge between heaven and hell. In other words, we are on the bridge that I suppose is capitalism, that is capitalism, which we have for very long time known to be a system that is horribly unjust, oppressive, based on exploitation. But now, more and more clearly every day, we understand capitalism as a system of destruction, as a system of destruction that is quite literally taking us to hell, that is quite literally taking us in the direction of the extinction of human life. No? In that sense, we are on a bridge that is leading us towards hell, and we are conscious of the absolute urgency of creating a different society, okay, which may not be heaven, of course, but creating a different society that would be based on very different principles, that would not be based on money, that would not be based on the accumulation of capital. I suppose that in a way takes me, yeah, I mean, that surely, I mean, for me sitting in Mexico, that is the importance of the Kurdish movement, or the movement in Rojava, that it opens up, that it keeps alive the possibility of building a radically different world. no, because that is what you are in fact doing, no, and that is of enormous importance, I think, to everybody in the world. The one thing I would criticize, I think is the title of this session a little bit. The title is Comparing the Rojava Experience with Other Civil Movements for Regime Change, Rojava's Lessons for Global Progressive Movements. And I suppose my worry about the title is that I think it understates the importance of Rojava. It's not just a question of regime change, it's a question of radical social change in the whole world. Regime change to me suggests a change of government, or a change of, basically a change of government. It's far, far more important than that. And it's not really lessons for global progressive movements. I think we should say directly what we're talking about is global anti-capitalist movements. We're talking about the urgent need to destroy this system that is destroying us. That surely is the importance of Rojava. So I kind of was thinking about a change in the title here to comparing the Rojava experience with other movements for radical social change, Rojava's lessons for global anti-capitalist movements. And then thinking of Sinan's talk, which I enjoyed an awful lot. I actually thought it was very impressive. And it was very impressive, not just for what you said, but for the very fact of saying it. And it seems to me that that's, thinking of these 10 sessions, that's enormously important. It's kind of this openness. It's the openness to discussion, the openness to criticism, this process of saying, well, this is what we are thinking. This is what we are trying to do. What do you think? This kind of openness to criticism, which is something I think that we have never seen in any other major anti-capitalist movement. No, that for me is extraordinarily impressive. No? And the other thing I liked about it was that Sinan mentioned Öcalan, I think, kind of once or twice at the beginning, and I was beginning to think, oh no, not we're going to have a repetition of Öcalan. And then Öcalan disappeared from the talk. And that just seems to me very important. It seems to me very important, not, I say that not to criticize Öcalan's idea, but just simply to underline the importance of a discussion that gradually goes assuming its own responsibilities. A few years ago, I spent a week in the Zapatista territory in Chiapas with a group of young Zapatistas who were explaining all about the movement and how they see it and its importance. And in that week, they never once mentioned the name of Subcomandante Marcos, as he then was, Galeano, as he now is. And that just seemed to me a great expression of maturity, that the movement can assume its own ideas, can talk about its own ideas without referring to a figure of authority. And as I say, that is not in any sense at all a criticism or a playing down of the enormous importance of Öcalan's ideas. What is the contribution then to what can we learn? What does Rojava teach us for global anti-capitalist movements? Well, the obvious thing, the important thing, is the rejection of the state, the rejection of the idea that revolutionary change should take place through a conquest of state power, the rejection of the state as a form of social organization. That came through very, very clearly in Sinan's talk. And it seems to me the great turning point in revolutionary theory over the last 30, 40 years. No, changing the world, radically getting rid of capitalism cannot be done through the state. And to try to do it through the state brings terrible consequences, the terrible consequences that we witnessed, I suppose, in the Soviet Union and in China. No, it creates authoritarian structures. It puts limits on the way that people act and the way that people can think, as Sinan underlined. It doesn't go through the state. The only way we can think, surely, of getting rid of this system that is literally destroying us, the only way we can think of getting rid of this system is by creating other forms of social organization. And I think that basically means, with many variations, creating forms of communal organization. Deep in the society where we just learn to do things, or we develop the existing practices of communal organization. And something else that seems to be enormously important in what Sinan said is that moving away from thinking in terms of the state means developing anti-identitarian thought and anti-identitarian forms of organization. If we move away from the state, move towards the idea of communal organization, then we are moving away from a grammar of being towards a grammar of doing. The state is based on the grammar of being. You are Turkish, you are Mexican, you are Irish, whatever. And the commune, I think, is not based on the grammar of being. It is based on the grammar of doing. We do together, we who are involved in some sort of activity or in some sort of area, some sort of commonness. We do things together, we learn to do. And that means that we break identities, we break, enormously important. I mean, I know that probably all of us, I know I do as well, talk of the Kurdish movement or the Kurdish revolution. But enormously important, what Sinan was saying, is that no, it's not that. It's actually a movement that breaks through Kurdish or Arab or Assyrian identities and tries to bring people together in different ways. And this anti-identitarian approach means opening up other ways of thinking as well. As something very important in Sinan's talk was the way he said, well, look, the state is a way of limiting what we can think, not just what we do. It's not just a form of violence. It's also something that shapes our thought. And to think of in terms of doing, in terms of breaking with the state, means also breaking with identitarian thought, breaking, I suppose, with all sorts of politics of identity. That seems to me really is fundamental lesson that we can learn from the Rojava movement. And there I'll throw in a little footnote that's important as well. I mean, I've learned that now enjoyed it in Sinan's talk. I also something I enjoyed enormously in a book that Feroz Manji, hello Feroz, mentions in the chat, that they have just published a book in Darajat Press. They've just published a book by Aziz Aslan on anti-capitalist organizing anti-capitalist economy and the contradictions in the revolutionary process in Rojava. In other words, it's kind of not, this is the right line, no? But all the time, we are open to discussion, we are trying to break barriers, we are trying to do things in a different way. Yeah, I think that's really what I wanted to say. No, but thank you very much, Sinan, for projecting to us, projecting across the world this openness, this process of experimentation, this openness to criticism, this process of really thinking as you're going along, and really being involved in the process of social construction of a different society, a different world, that people like us is actually hard to grasp, is hard to understand. So yeah, enormous thanks. Thank you. Thanks, John.
Thank you, John. Thank you so much for those comments. You've hit on so many essential, profound points in the message that Sinan shared with us. I mean, so eloquently and beautifully phrased. Thank you so much, John, for those thoughts. One of the elements that you landed on, which was something that also stood out for me, was this question of a kind of universalism that goes beyond the particular religious or ethnic character of the people participating in this revolution in northeast Syria. Sinan mentioned that this transcending of ethnic or religious or cultural distinctions that was characteristic of this revolution was what made it different from so many other movements, both historical and current, and almost belied its being called a revolution. Because it did not share those identitarian qualities that you referred to. And it occurred to me that it was precisely because of that transcendence, precisely because it moved beyond those national, ethnic, cultural, and religious boundaries, and even territorial boundaries, that makes it the revolution that it is. That makes it the revolution that has the most to teach us in these times. And so it is precisely this anti-identitarian quality of it that makes it revolutionary, even in relation to other existing revolutionary movements. So enormously important, this distinction. And of course, the focus on a civil revolution, on a revolution of how people relate to each other in community, on the sovereignty of civil society, and the reorganization of political power within a frame of community and the civil idea of community, not the nation-state idea of community. The other sort of touchstone for what characterizes Rojava and its importance, I think, to us. Anyway, thank you so much, John, for those reflections, and Sinan, thank you too for sharing your message with us. I would like to invite people now to share any questions or comments that they would like to pose either to John or to Sinan, and I will do my best to try and moderate them. If you have a question, please write it down, include it in the chat bubble at the bottom of the screen. As we wait for any questions that people may pose, let me ask Sinan if he would like now to respond to any of the points that John, you made in your remarks.
Novel is spasiya ve John.
And thank you very much, John. There is only one point maybe I can mention. The things that we learn or in the scientific methods, citation is very important. So when you use someone else's idea, you have to cite the person. So as we are aiming at an ethical society, we have to share the original author of that idea. So when we are talking about leader Öcalan, that's why we are talking about his name. This is not something that compulsory, but this is the scientific method that we know try to use. Otherwise, my personal ideas, my personal feelings are different. That's why we mention his. That's why we find it necessary to repeat his name. But the other things and another critique, and I agree with you and thank you very much. And it was very important for us to hear your voice and your ideas, and I'm very happy to see you.
Thank you, Sinan. I do have a couple of questions that have appeared in our chat. The first is from Sarah Glynn, and she writes, I was wondering, please, if you could describe with examples the dialectical process of the revolution, how experience has impacted and further developed the theory. That's the first question. And a second question from Christian Stahlberg is how much sharing of information is taking place between the Democratic...
Can you repeat the first question, please?
Yes, I was wondering if you could describe with examples the dialectical process of the revolution, how experience has impacted on and further developed the theory. All right, I'll let you think about that for a moment. And the second question is, how much sharing of information is taking place between the Democratic Confederalism movement in Northeast Syria with the Commune movement in Venezuela?
Thank you for the questions. Okay, I will start with this last question. Actually, I don't know specifically about the exchange between Venezuela. I'm not working in this field, but I am sure some friends at the Civil Diplomacy Center, if they are familiar or if they have information, they can answer. So sorry, I cannot answer this question. And the first question, we face too many challenges, lots of challenges. There's different reasons. The theory and the practice, the difference. That's what I wanted to mention. We are under influence of the systems. I mean, because we are always being, our ideas in the society, we are under very strong influence of the state system, capitalist system, and everything. And because our thinking, the way we think is shaped by the system, it is very difficult for many people to change or break this and to be able to think in line with the revolution. So that's why we are having discussions, everyone, try to try to make them understand why it has to change, why it has to be like this. So we even couldn't manage to get the theory accepted by everyone, let alone practicing or bringing it to life. So the ecology, environment friendly, the people who are interested in politics and in different fields. Not everybody is that much interested in different fields. But for example, when we have our municipalities, we want the municipalities to be more environment friendly, but our friends working at municipality, they are still thinking like the state and the municipality of a state, not a society and the others. Or the legislation we have is also a different thing. Of course, we have some rules and legislations and laws, but we want the people to act more based on their moral values rather than not because of the law says so. And then when we look at the lawyers, they don't want to understand the system, the jurisdiction system that we want to have. But as you said, we have been educated by the nation state, and then it's not some 10, 20 years, it's like hundreds years. So it takes time. For example, some teachers at schools, they want to beat up the children because that's the tradition at the state schools. Now they try to convince us that they can actually pull out their ears if they do something, if they get naughty. We say, no, this is not the way that you do it. But that's how they are educated, and that's how they were treated when they were children. Of course, we have education, training. So the question is, do you want to change the society according to the way that it might, or you really want a change and you take radical steps? That's the problem, that's the place that we face problems. So if you want these radical steps, of course, then it delays the revolution. It delays the foundation of the new system. If you don't go along with the existing system, existing approaches. So the balance, and now we're trying to have a balance. Okay, influence from the former system, it is there, but we also want to have the radical change. So we are trying to have a parallel improvement, but we try to educate the society, but also bring it into practice. It is very difficult. We we face really big challenges in every field, from the municipalities to shopkeepers or the court or university or the police forces or the defense forces, diplomacy. We have these contradictions, but I will finish with this. We always want to have this. We are not normally the discussions. People always talk about the negative things. This revolution cannot happen because of this. No, we want to focus on this revolution can happen because of this. So as positive examples that's where I focus. There might be 99 negative examples, but I focus on one example that is positive.
All right. Thank you so much for that. I want to just recognize something in what you said just now, Sinan. The challenge, the difficulty of reconciling the values and the aims of the revolution with the facts of the situation and how people have been influenced and conditioned by the training that they have received and the attitudes that they have. And your comment that the aim here is a balance between the target, the aim, and the reality on the ground. And trying to achieve this balance, not through the imposition of radical moves that align with the views or the philosophy of the revolution, but rather taking things and people's attitudes as they are and working within that reality. And to me, what this shows is a profound respect for people. A respect that whatever the conditioning and the attitudes and the prejudices that people may have, that there is a respect for people and that you work with that respect gradually over time and through education to change people's attitudes, to change people's behavior. And it is not a question of imposing violently whatever revolutionary ideas that the leadership of the revolution may believe in. So I think that is illustrates, I think, and characterizes a very humane approach to trying to realize the revolution in the framework of where people really are and where society really is at the moment. I think it's extraordinarily important. Let me share with you another question. This is from Jared Eberneck, and it reads, "It is so important what has been said. We need to center the universal struggle against capitalism without being taken in by identity politics that central state power." From Emma Goldman to Murray Bookchin to Öcalan, we have a science of hierarchy and state power as patriarchal incarnation. The red nation states clearly that what manufactures crisis cannot be used to solve it. This movement calls the Buen Vivir ideas of South America and the indigenous resistance across Turtle Island to mind. So the question is, can you elaborate on how the structure of democratic confederalism changes the framework of our freedom struggle? John, may I also put that question to you as well once Sinan answers?
Sorry, did you ask a second question? No.
Yes.
Do you want to ask a second question, or
No,
I was trying
no,
to...
That's it. That was the question. There is another question, but
In fact, related to the previous question, we base the revolution and the autonomous administration on the personalities, free personalities. Our main goal is creating this free people, free person. And a free person can also involve in the common system and run democratic politics and also promote liberation of women. Then he can have or she can have a big free perspective of freedom. Maybe our difference between the revolution in Rojava and the theory of the freedom of Kurdistan is there. Day by at the beginning we want to create the person. So and a successful example of this, I mean, this free person is much better than hundreds of pages of theory. So and they also talk about the socialist regimes. Of course, they have some state culture in it, and then they always ignore the individual, and they always talk about the society. But this is also a wrong. We criticize this approach too, because the most important thing is the person, is the individual, because this individual come together and then they make up the society. So every person is, and we always ask the question, Öcalan says that you have to be a searcher for the democratic confederalism. So it all goes back to one person, because everything, because when you say why, just Socrates from today, these are all the people that we actually substantiate our knowledge. And if we have these free persons who are open and interested and political and moral, then we can without any restrictions that are taught us or the identity or whatsoever. So we can find these people interested in the Aboriginals in Australia, or the climate change happening somewhere else, or the polar bears. They will also think about them. So if I see a woman scared in the middle of the night in the street, then I have to feel their pain. I also think about the people who are starving, and then people who cannot even make enough money to feed their children. Or I see or a mother who is concerned how she can raise her child with moral values. So they are all these things, they all come back to the individuals. These are all a free person will be also interested in all the different problems in the entire world. So and then I can get in touch with anyone in the world together, to because I own those problems happening in the different parts of the world. This is our and in that sense I agree, John, the way that he said an individual freedom but if we cannot have a revolution if you only want to have the freedom of a class or freedom of one ethnic group, or no, we have to be universal freedom for everyone. And as I said, it starts with the
Ama
free
insan
human.
eşi belki de tekildi de, hereme koda, coğrafya koda, cürbe cürbe,
Yeah,
ziravi bir tamam. Ama em hemû
is
insan
we are all human beings at the end, and then
bir çerçeve insan değeri. Yani evci
we need this kind of free thinking, open, interested people that they will understand themselves even better, and then they will be open to the others, and then try to help everyone and own all the problems in the world as if they are his or her own problems. And thank you for the question.
Thank you so much for that, Sinan. John, I had referred that question to you as well. Would you like to add your own reflection on that point?
Yes, quickly. I wanted to come back as well to what you were saying about about how Sinan's approach displays the importance of respect for people and where people are. I think that's very close to the Zapatista notion of dignity. Dignity really is they're fighting for human dignity against a society that is based on the negation of dignity. And that means, yes, that you don't tell breaks with the politics of monologue. No? I mean, a state-centered politics is a politics of monologue. Once you break with that, you enter into a politics of dialogue, a process of constant discussion. And the great Zapatista slogan, preguntando caminamos, asking we walk. You move forward by asking. And of course, that's going to take more time. They also have another lovely saying, we walk, we do not run, because we are going a long way. And it seems to me that is also very present in the Rojava experience. And that, of course, has to do with the whole question of freedom and how we think about freedom as an individual and social process, as the creation of a world that is not based on the negation of freedom that the existence of capitalism implies. That's really what I wanted to.
Wonderful.
say.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for that, John. We are nearing the end of our time. So I would like to add just a final reflection. First, to thank you, Sinan, wholeheartedly for the work you do, yourself and your colleagues, Nushan, who's in there somewhere, I believe, and her colleagues at the Center for Civil Diplomacy for having taken such effort to organize your presentations in a very difficult situation, and to take part in this series. It's been a remarkable collaboration with all of you, and I thank you, from the bottom of my heart for allowing us to dialogue with you on the work that you are doing. John, thank you also for taking part and sharing your own reflections, also connected to your own experience and work within the Zapatista movement in Mexico. Your thoughts have been extraordinarily sensitive and responsive to the themes that Sinan introduced to us in this talk. This is the last in our dialogue series. It's been such a profound experience and a privilege for me to have taken part in this and to be moderating these lectures. So I want to thank the Global University for Sustainability, that invited me to help to organize and moderate this series. It's been an honor and a privilege to do so. So thank you, Jade and Kinchin and all of my good friends at the Global University for Sustainability for inviting me to take this role. It's been an honor and a pleasure. The third co-sponsor of the series is Synergia Cooperative Institute, which I'm a co-founder and a member. And so I was very happy to bring whatever little support we could to help make this series happen. So we are at the end of our dialogue series. I hope it's been of value to all those people from all around the world that participated in this. It's been a rich, varied, deep, and challenging discussion on so many levels, on so many fronts, around so many issues. And I thank all of you for having made it possible. Now, I'm going to ask you, Jay, to say a few final words before we close off the session. And so please do take a moment and share with us whatever news and commentary you'd like to share.
Yeah. Thank you very much. First of all, I also would like to thank Nushan and other colleagues from CDC and also John to design the course and to help the coordination of lecturers, respondents, and interpreters, and also the facilitate the discussion and debate in each webinars. And also thanks to our Global U technical teams members, particularly Kinchin, George, and Marco. And because this series is very special, it is born in the shadow of bombings. And also we are also under the threat of these out of the electricity and the internet of each webinars. So I'm really grateful that we continue to make these 10 lectures put into practice. And Global U has organized many lecture series. It's named the South-South Dialogue for Sustainability. In the past, we have organized a lecture series about Venezuela communist movement, chapters, cosmovision, African peoples for struggle for liberation, Brazil people constructing alternative paradigms, and also Rojavas. So we continue to recognize the subjugated knowledge from the global South, and also it is also we have the driving force to search for alternatives. That's why we embrace the uncertainties and the hardships. So thank you again, in solidarity to all of you.
Thank you, Jade. Thank you, everybody. Take good care, reflect well, and be well, and hopefully we'll meet again, if not in person, online at some future time. Goodbye, everybody. Goodbye, John. Goodbye, Sinan. Thank you, Jade. Bye-bye.